really you need to understand, or you need to identify when you come back home, how do you want to feel? Because I've been that person who's come back from a trip and I'm like, I do not want to get on the scale for like multiple days. Like I want to just starve myself like 1 or 2 days, like just very heavily under eat, do a ton of cardio. And then at that point I'll check the scale weight and hopefully I won't be any heavier than I was when I left. Now, this idea, like this I guess reference point, if that's been you in the past, which it certainly has been me years ago, I took more of a, cavalier approach where I would go on trips and I would just be like, fuck it. Like, it's an excuse. And I didn't really take a lot of personal responsibility around food behaviors because I just blamed it on, well, I'm traveling, so I have no control over anything. And it's understandable. Like, this isn't me shitting on myself. Like, I know why I did that. I just like I didn't realize how much control I actually had over, my decisions when it came to food. And I didn't want that responsibility because that responsibility is hard. I mean, like, that is heavy. And you can pretty much trace back anytime you get on the scale and like you see that you're at a heavier, set point, you can pretty much work your way backwards to every decision you've made around food or exercise. And it can completely add up. Like, the math will math, because whether or not you track your calories, whether or not you are honest with yourself, because we love to lie to ourselves, your body will keep a very accurate inventory on the calories that go in and the calories that you burn. Now, one thing I want to say, actually there's 1,000 things I want to say, but one thing I will say right now, getting away from like the ambiguity with like, I want to be smart, I want to eat healthy, and that being like a goal you set, like that can be a starting point, and that can be the umbrella is like, okay, like that maybe is like your first introductory, like, do you want to eat like an asshole or do you not want to eat like an asshole? And that's like really the first decision I would make. There's some trips I've gone on and I've been like, I'm going to indulge. I'm going to probably come back a little bit higher body fat than I left. And I accept that. I take on that responsibility. God, you know how freeing it is to do that? You know how nice it is just to be like, this was intended. This was not a surprise. Like, I knew going into this, I take ownership for my actions. That is so superior than coming back and living in this, like, I don't know, this fantasy of like, I have no idea how this body fat accrued. I was so strict. Were you? If you're going in with the mindset that you're going to be prepared to resist temptations, you need to very, very clearly identify what you plan to do. If once you're there, you don't have the willpower, because it's not just a matter of what you're going to do in a reactionary approach. It's more important, I would say equally, but probably more important, that you figure out what you're not going to do and like set very clear parameters. Like, I like to make things simple. When I travel, I start by laying out as clearly as I can what would need to happen, like what's the worst I could do on this trip. And like when we went to Tampa, like Jordan and I had just started dating like a few months before that, and like he's super supportive, and we're in an environment where everyone's gonna like meal prep probably anyway, but it's still like we're gonna go out to eat, we're going to have variable training times, and like I didn't have a car, so I was like, okay, like we're not walking distance to the gym, like yes I could Uber, but like I want to be just cognizant fiscally around this. And I went in and I'm like, okay, like I know exactly, based on past fuck ups, I know exactly what would need to happen for me to come back and be like 5-10 pounds heavier. And for me, you don't have to do this, but like I find it really helpful to actually go in and be like, okay, here is my current maintenance right now based on the cardio I'm doing, based on, body mass generally. I would have to eat 500 calories over my maintenance every single day to gain 1 pound of body fat. So I have to think back, okay, like how many days do you realistically think you're going to go out to eat? I was gone for like 2.5 weeks. I was like, we're going to have multiple untracked meals. So like those in my mind are all opportunities for me easily to get in like 1,000 calories to 1,500 calories if I'm not careful, because I do have a big appetite. Like I do like eating food that's calorically dense, that's highly palatable. And I'm not someone who is like, oh, I'm gonna go and like not eat. Like I do think in this setting it'd be like kind of fucking rude. But I knew going into it, I'm like, there's gonna be a lot of opportunity to overindulge. So I thought about it and I'm like, okay, so let's say I have like 10 to 14 potential opportunities for me to overshoot with food, like meals that are going to be hard to track. What does that look like then for those meals that I can track? So when we go to Chipotle, when we didn't go to Starbucks to get breakfast, but if you go to Starbucks and get like I don't know, egg white whatever. So it's like, there are going to be meals that are easy to track and meals that are very hard to track. Depending on the ratio of those meals, that should honestly determine how strict you need to be on those trackable meals and how cognizant you need to be of your output, because we've really got two parts of the equation that determine if you come back heavier or lighter. We've got the input and the output. That is going to result in either a net positive, so a surplus, a net negative, a deficit, or net zero. You came back roughly the same. Now, you need to start by asking these questions. How do you want to feel when you return? What's an acceptable amount of loss? And when I say loss, I don't mean like how much fat do you want to lose? Like how much progress do you want to make while you're away? I mean like you are losing progress. I would not go into any like extended stay vacation or even short vacation where you're going to not be extremely strict. I would go in and be like, okay, this vacation I'm probably going to sacrifice productivity, meaning how much progress during the trip are you willing to accept you are not going to make? So I'll tell you a story. For instance, I went to Tulum on like a honeymoon with people that had gotten married. I was like tagging along with my boyfriend at the time. And it was really like, I love Tulum. It's fun. Exactly like where I would want to be at that point in my life. But I was in contest prep and this was going to fall like at that 7 to 6 weeks out period, which honestly was more like my 4-week out period, because that was the point in which I was like, I want to be stage ready 2 weeks out. And I was like, motherfucker, like I don't want to go. Like I'm going to go, but this is like really not ideal. And I went into that and I'm like, I am going to have to honestly probably stress to not lose progress while away. And because I don't want to move my shows back any further, because I was timing them around when I was going to start clinicals with nursing school, I was like, honestly, I think it makes the most sense for me to go in and be like, I cannot sacrifice any progress while away, because this goal to me is more important than just indulging in very brief stints. Because frankly, even if I had indulged, there were probably going to be more calories than I was anticipating. And I couldn't really come back. And I was on such a good trajectory in my prep too. And that was really like why I wanted to make sure I didn't take any steps back, because I was like, I've done so well with this prep thus far. I don't want to fuck it up because of like a 7-day trip. I forget how long we went. I think it was like 5 to 7 days, but okay. Third question. How much control do I have over my actions and my environment? And for example, like I had a client a few weeks ago who she went on a trip to Belgium and she was without a gym, without a refrigerator for 2 weeks. And she was also strapped for time while away. Like this was a work trip. So she's like, I'm going to probably be working like an actual 8 to 10 hours, like not leaving the building. Probably not going to work out after those long days. So this is an example of someone who like doesn't have a lot of control. Whereas like when I went to Tulum, I was with, people like I kind of knew, and like, my boyfriend. So I was like, oh, okay, I can like speak up for myself and I can just go to these meals and like not eat. I can always like carve out time like separately to get an activity. But in the case like you're going and you don't have the ability to pick your gym timing, and like let's say you do have obligations that are non-negotiables, okay, well then like you might have to accept, based on the control over your actions in your environment, maybe you're going to have to sacrifice some progress. And fourth question, how ready do you feel to decline food, drinks, etc., anything that's going to steer you away from your goals? So I'm gonna try to think back. Like Jordan and I, we went to Texas maybe like 10 days ago, and going into it, like we've like mapped out pretty clear like performance goals. So I was like, we're going to be gone for 4 days. Training's going to probably be affected the day after. So it's like 5 days of fucked training. And I asked him, I'm like, is this something that like you really like, how important is it to you for us to work out while you're there? And he's honestly like, yo, like, we're meeting your family for the first time. I don't want to make it about our training goals. Like, if you want to go, cool, but like, I'm very much okay with taking that time off, which sick, major points there. But with this, like, I kind of went into that conversation with him around like, if he was like, I really want to train on these days, even if it's like a push session, like, it's understandable. I want to respect that. And I was kind of like in the mix of like, if he would like to continue training while we're there, cool. If he doesn't, I'm not going to force it. I'm going to spend time with my family because I haven't been home in a long time, and I really do want to soak up as much time as I can with them because I'm only going to be there for a few days. So another example is I had a client who, we were like 2 weeks into our coaching term, and she emails me saying, you know, my husband, they've been married for so long. He surprised me with a weekend getaway, which she's like, this is pretty rare. Like, he's not the best at surprising me. Usually like he's not able to pull it off. And in this case, she like felt really bad. And he was even like, oh, like, do you still want to go? And I was like, dude, no, like, that's super sweet. Like, I think you should honor like the fact that this is obviously, I mean, this was an anniversary trip. Like, you need to honor this relationship and the efforts that he put forth. And like, it's like a few days, like, you're going to be fine. Even if you come back a little bit heavier, I know it's not ideal and it's not something that like you anticipated, but you know, we ended up game planning, and all in all, just understanding like she was going to be present. She was going to focus on the experience, and that she was comfortable doing damage control after, but intentionally she wasn't going to overindulge. And like, we did keep it a little more ambiguous, but it was very clear going into it, like, hey, I'm not going to decline these indulgent meals, and I'm probably going to have some drinks, and I'm going to focus on just the experience itself, which I think overall was absolutely the best call. And I think, in my experience, the number one predictor for someone's success in traveling while working towards any goal is being honest about how they plan or how they can predict they'll make decisions once they're away.